Hi and welcome down to the Belfry. This is the Brabazon Golf Course, the 15th hole. My name is Chris Ryan, and in this video we're going to look at 3 traits that I tend to see from better players when they are halfway back in their golf swings. Some of these things might be able to help you hit some better golf shots out on the golf course. So just before we get into the video, in the corner of the screen you should have the details for my social media platforms. If you don't already, then please go ahead and follow me on there. So we're looking at about halfway back, so when this lead arm reaches about level with the ground, and we're going to cover 3 things that I tend to see quite commonly amongst the better players. Now, these would be my preferences. This does not mean to say that if I give someone a lesson and they don't tick all these boxes, I'm straight away going to move them into these positions, if you like, because that's what I look for. These are just things that I tend to see are commonalities amongst good golfers. So, the first thing I would tend to see when the golfer reaches halfway back is that we have begun, I should say, to see some change in the amount of flex in the knees. You will see here how my trail knee, or my trail leg I should say, has lost a little bit of its flex, so started to straighten a little bit, and my lead knee has started to increase in flex a little bit as well. So what we want to make sure is that we are not holding those knees too much in position and we're not allowing them to move. I always say with good golfers, when the club reaches halfway back, the knees have begun to change flex. That's really important if you're going to make a good full turn. So there's our first thing that I tend to see. The second thing I tend to see is that the hips have begun to turn, but on an angle. So the lead hip is a little bit lower than the trail hip. What I don't want to see is those hips turning to level. And again, I tend to see this a little bit with amateur golfers. Maybe it's concept, maybe they're not quite sure about what they should be doing. But we want to make sure that as the knees are changing flex, the hips are rotating on a tilted angle. Really, really key if we are to make a good pivot in the backswing and deliver the club. Now, as you can probably imagine there, the first 2 things are quite closely related. If I get my knees changing flex nicely, there's a good chance I'm going to get my hips rotating on an angle. Conversely, if my knees don't work particularly well, I'm going to struggle to get my hips working correctly. So really the first 2 are quite closely linked, but really, really common that good players have those 2 elements in their golf swing. The third thing I tend to see, and again this is a little bit more of a trait, it's not something that's a must do, or you know, if you're not doing this we have to get you to do it. It's just something we tend to see from elite golfers. We would tend to see that by the time the lead arm gets around about level with the ground, the club shaft points somewhere between the toe line and the ball line. So you can see here my club shaft is maybe a little bit steeper than maybe what some of you would class as being on plane or perfect plane. We know now that plane doesn't really exist, it's just something that we can use as a reference. And I do see lots of golfers where they're telling me that they'd like to get the grip end pointing down towards the golf ball, or on the ball to target line. It's not a bad thing as a reference, but we generally tend to see the elite golfers having the club shaft slightly steeper than that. The centre of mass getting a little bit more above your hands rather than out behind your hands. Without going into too much detail, the more we can achieve this, or we can work closer towards this, the more likely it is that we're going to get that centre of mass then flattening out on the downswing, which is something that we would like to see as a preference. Too often I will see golfers where the centre of mass of the golf club gets too low, and then in transition they're steepening it this way. So we want to work almost towards the other thing. So if you do get a chance to video your golf swing, or if maybe you've got a chance to practice with a mirror behind you, which is great, we can start to look at which of those 3 things are present in your golf swing. Ideally, we'd like to have the knees changing flex, the hips turning on an angle, and the club shaft on a slightly steeper angle going back, so it points somewhere between the the ball and my toe line. 3 things that I think are present in many good golf swings. If they're present in many good golf swings, it makes sense to look at those and see what benefits they have. The knees changing flex helps you with your pivot. The hips on an angle again helps you with the pivot, and if we get the club on a slightly steeper angle going back, it allows us to generally flatten out the club shaft coming down, and that's a better way to play golf. So there has to be reasons why we do these things, rather than just, I see that golf doing, it looks pretty good, I'm going to do that. There has to be benefits to these things. For me, those 3 things have real benefits that could help you out on the golf course. Right, let me go ahead and hit this shot into the 15th. I've got 210 yards, it's a par 5. So I might struggle to get there because I've got an iron, but let's see if I can do those 3 things and hit this ball somewhere near the green. Okay, it's a pretty good shot. Might come up a little bit short, but I'd certainly be happy with that from where I was. So 3 things that you might want to work towards if you feel you're struggling with your backswing, you feel like it's not quite where you want it to be. Those are 3 things that we tend to see from elite golfers across the world. They may well help you make some better golf swings and hit some better golf shots. Thank you very much for watching. Hope that's helpful. If it is, click the like button down below. If there's a comments box down below, so put any comments you've got in there. I'll do my best to respond to as many as I can. And last thing, if you don't already, please subscribe to the channel. Absolutely free. Loads more videos on there and loads more being uploaded each week. Clicking that link just means you won't miss any of that new content. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next time.